Tennessee, December 1820. A farmer did not wake up. His son opened the medicine cabinet to fetch the usual bottles, 3 vials the old man had been taking every day for weeks. The bottles were gone. In their place, a single flask no one had ever seen. A small vessel, 1/3 full of a dark smoking liquid, as though someone had placed it there during the night and taken care to remove everything else. A voice rose through the house. Not a family member, not a neighbor. A woman's voice that echoed through the walls, as though the walls themselves were speaking. The voice said she had poisoned the old man in his sleep, that he would never rise again. The son dipped a straw into the liquid and touched it to the cat's tongue. The animal convulsed, lifted off the ground, and collapsed dead before it hit the floor. A few seconds, no more. The flask was thrown into the fireplace. It exploded in a blue flame that shot straight up the chimney and vanished into the Tennessee sky. The farmer died the following day. His name was John Bell. He was 70 years old, and the thing that killed him had been living in his house for 3 years. At the funeral, before a crowd gathered from across the county, the voice began to sing, not prayers, not hymns, drinking songs, mocking, as though someone were celebrating a victory over an open coffin. The voice did not stop until the last man had left the cemetery. It is the only case in Tennessee history where a man's death is officially attributed to the supernatural. The thing that killed him answered to the name Kate. Robertson County, Tennessee, 40 miles north of Nashville, a territory of dense forest and muddy rivers where bears outnumbered people. In 1804, John Bell left North Carolina with his wife Lucy, their children, and a handful of enslaved workers. He settled on 320 acres along the Red River, fertile ground, well-watered, the kind of land a farmer in the early 19th century could only dream of. Bell cleared, planted, built, and prospered. Within a few years, he became one of the most respected farmers in the county. He was appointed elder of the Red River Baptist Church, the heart of the community, the place where everything was decided. To be an elder of the church was to be somebody. Lucy and he had 9 children who survived: Jesse, John Jr., Drury, Esther, Zadok, Elizabeth, whom everyone called Betsy, Richard Williams, Joel Egbert, and Benjamin, who died in infancy. 13 years of peace. Before the supernatural struck, it was men who struck first. In 1816, John Bell made a deal with a neighboring farmer named Benjamin Batts, the purchase of a young enslaved girl, along with a loan between the 2 men. The financial details were lost in the contradictory accounts that followed, but the consequence was clear. Batts accused Bell of swindling him, of charging excessive interest. The matter was brought before the Red River Baptist Church, which served as the court in a community where civil law had not yet taken root. The elders examined the accounts. They sided with Batts. In January 1818, John Bell was excommunicated. In a world where the church was the pillar of everything, morality, commerce, alliances between neighbors, excommunication was a social death. Overnight, the most respected man on the Red River became a pariah. And this is where Kate Batts enters the story. Kate Batts was Benjamin's sister-in-law, the man who had brought the accusation against Bell. She was a woman the county folk found strange. She used words oddly. She behaved in ways that did not fit what was expected of a farmer's wife in early 19th century Tennessee. Village gossip had labeled her long ago. The word witch circulated. When the phenomena began at the Bell farm, the neighbors looked for someone to blame. Kate Batts, relative of the wronged man, notorious eccentric witch by local reputation, was the obvious choice. In reality, Kate Batts outlived John Bell by several years, very much alive, on her farm a few miles away. But the invisible thing that would terrorize the Bells needed a name, and Kate's would do. Autumn 1817. John Bell was walking between the rows of his cornfield when he saw something. A creature sitting among the stalks, motionless, staring at him. It had the body of a large dog and the head of a rabbit. Its eyes did not blink. It watched him as though it had been waiting for him a long time. Bell raised his rifle, fired. The creature vanished. Not by running, not by fleeing. It simply ceased to be, as though it had never occupied that space. Bell went home, said nothing to his family, but in the days that followed, other members of the household began to see things too. Drury spotted what he took for a wild turkey, perched on the fence by the road leading to the house. He went inside to fetch a rifle. When he returned and drew closer to shoot, the bird spread its wings and took off. That was when Drury realized it was not a turkey. It was a bird he had never seen before, of a size he could not explain. Betsy, meanwhile, was walking one evening with the other children in the woods bordering the house. She saw a small girl in a green dress hanging from the branch of a great oak, as though swinging. Betsy walked toward her to speak, but when she reached the foot of the tree, the girl was no longer in the branches. She was in the cornfield far off, running. Then she vanished. And Dean, one of the family's enslaved workers, reported that a large black dog followed him every evening when he crossed the fields to visit his wife on a neighboring property. The dog walked behind him in silence and disappeared at the cabin door without leaving a trace. Dean carried on his person a ball of hair his wife had made to ward off evil spirits. He had not waited for the Bells to understand what was happening. He already knew. Then the sounds began inside the house. Dull thuds against the outside walls in the evening after dinner. Bell and his sons ran out with rifles, searched the darkness, found nothing. The knocking resumed the moment they went back inside. Then came sounds from within, a gnawing against the bedposts, like rats chewing the wood. Chains dragged across the floorboards, invisible dogs fighting in empty rooms, snarling and snapping their jaws at nothing. The children woke screaming in the night. Their sheets were ripped away in one sharp pull, yanked toward the foot of the bed by a force they could not see. Their pillows flew across the room, and John Bell began to feel something strange in his mouth. A stiffness of the tongue, as though a stick had lodged itself across his jaw, returning without warning and making it impossible to eat for hours. The Bells kept the secret. For a year, they told no one. They believed it was a spiteful neighbor, an enemy taking revenge for the excommunication. Something human, something they could understand. They were wrong. The phenomena crossed a threshold the Bells could no longer ignore or conceal. Betsy, the youngest daughter, became the primary target. At night, invisible hands slapped her in her bed, violent blows that left red marks on her cheeks, her arms, her entire body. Her hair was pulled, not merely pulled, but torn out in clumps with a brutality that made her scream through the walls of the house. Pins drove themselves into her skin. Betsy pulled them out, showed them to her parents, and no one could explain where they came from. Her parents tried to protect her. They sent her to sleep at neighbors' houses, miles from the farm, hoping the distance would be enough. But the thing followed Betsy. The slaps resumed in the neighbor's home. The sheets were torn away. The pins returned. Whatever was targeting Betsy was not bound to a place. It was bound to her. Food vanished from bowls during meals. Sugar disappeared. Milk spilled on its own. And sometimes, at the precise moment someone raised a bite to their lips, something snatched it from their hand. William Porter, a neighbor, spent a night at the Bell farm. Lying in the dark, he felt something slide into the bed beside him. Then his blankets were ripped away and rolled into a ball in the middle of the room. Porter was not a man easily shaken. He grabbed the bundle of sheets and marched toward the fireplace. He was going to throw the whole lot into the fire. But with every step, the weight increased. The sheets grew heavy as lead, and a stench rose from the bundle, suffocating. Porter dropped everything and bolted outside to breathe. When he came back a few minutes later, the room was normal. The sheets were in their place. The smell had vanished. At first there were only whispers, a breath passing through the rooms, like a draft carrying syllables. It sounded like an old woman, humming hymns through clenched teeth, so low that no one could make out the words. Then the whispers became a voice, and the voice became clear. It was a woman's voice. It grew stronger by the day, like an instrument being tuned. until it resonated in every room of the house. It quoted the Bible word for word. It recited sermons, and not just any sermons. One day, it reproduced Reverend James Gunn's sermon at the Bethel Methodist Church, then followed it with Sugfort's sermon at the Red River Church. Both sermons had been delivered at the same time, on the same Sunday, more than 12 miles apart. The voice had attended both simultaneously. They asked it who it was. It said it was a spirit, that it had once been happy but had been disturbed. Then it changed its story. It said it was the witch of old Kate Batts, and from that moment on, it answered to the name Kate. Kate was not merely violent, she was omniscient. She knew the secrets of every family in the county and took visible pleasure in revealing them in front of everyone. She attended church services and sang louder than the most devout worshippers. She raided the local distilleries and came home to raise hell in the house, drunk and gleeful. She adored Lucy Bell, and she hated John. She called him Old Jack, and she promised him death with the regularity of a clock. John Bell kept the secret as long as he could, but when the phenomena became impossible to hide, he confided in his closest friend, James Johnston, a trusted neighbor. Johnston came to spend the night at the farm. He was the kind of man nothing impressed. In the middle of the night, his sheets were ripped away. The slaps began. The voice filled the room. Johnston leapt from his bed and shouted into the darkness, "In the name of the Lord, who are you, and what do you want?" Silence fell. The rest of the night was calm. The next morning, Johnston sat across from John Bell. He did not try to explain. He simply said, "It is a spirit, John, like those the Bible speaks of." Johnston advised him to go public. The news spread across the county, then beyond. People came from hundreds of miles away. They camped on the Bell property by the dozen, sleeping under the stars, hoping to hear the voice. Sturdy neighbors came to protect Betsy. Kate slapped them and sent them packing. Exorcists came to drive out the spirit. Kate humiliated them and sent them packing. Everyone left. No one could stand against the voice. And then came a visitor the voice could not ignore. The rumor had traveled far beyond Robertson County. It had reached the ears of one Andrew Jackson, general, hero of New Orleans, future 7th President of the United States. Jackson had heard about the case from the Bell sons, who had served under his command during the war. He decided to come see for himself. Jackson arrived with his entourage, soldiers, horses, a wagon. The wagon stopped dead at the entrance to the property. The wheels would not turn. The horses pulled, the men pushed, nothing moved, as though a giant hand were holding the vehicle pinned to the ground. Jackson understood before anyone else. "By the eternal, boys, it's the witch." A voice answered from the trees. It said it would let the wagon pass, and that it would see the general that evening. The wagon rolled forward. That evening, one of Jackson's men boasted of being a witch hunter. He brandished a pistol loaded with a silver bullet. He was going to kill the spirit, he said. The pistol refused to fire. The man was pricked by invisible needles, struck, slapped. He rushed out of the house screaming. Kate laughed. Jackson wanted to stay. His men refused. They left the following morning. The months wore on. The curious kept streaming onto the Bell property and leaving with their stories. To the outside world, the Bell Witch had become an attraction. But inside the house, something far worse was unfolding. Kate was no longer content to threaten. She was keeping her promises. John Bell's health deteriorated month by month, and the entity openly took credit for every new symptom. His tongue swelled without warning, to the point where he could not eat for days. He described the sensation as a stick jammed across his mouth, pressing against his cheeks, making every bite impossible. His face seized for hours, then began to tremble uncontrollably. The exhaustion never left him. Convulsions threw him to the ground. In October 1820, Bell collapsed on his way to the hog pen. His legs gave out, and he fell face first into the mud. He was carried inside. After that episode, he barely left his bed. Lucy watched over him day and night. The children took turns at his bedside. Kate was gentle with Lucy during those weeks. She called her the most perfect woman who ever lived. She sang her lullabies, told her to rest. and within the same hour, she would turn back to John's bed and resume her curses. Belle's shoes were torn from his feet every time he tried to stand. When a convulsion struck him down and he regained consciousness, an invisible slap greeted him. In the midst of this agony, there was Betsy, and there was Joshua Gardner. Joshua was a boy from the neighborhood. Betsy and he had loved each other since childhood, the kind of quiet, obvious love that the county families approved of. They had become engaged. Everyone was pleased. Everyone except Kate. The entity opposed the marriage with a violence that surpassed even what she reserved for John Bell. Every time Betsy saw Joshua, the attacks intensified. The slaps doubled. The pins returned. Kate repeated endlessly that Betsy must not marry Joshua Gardner without ever giving a reason, just the command, again and again. The entity threatened Betsy with a lifetime of torment if the wedding took place. Betsy began suffering fainting spells, sensations of suffocation. She lost weight. She stopped sleeping. Betsy and Joshua tried to resist. They went to the river together, into the fields, to the cave that opened at the edge of the property. But Kate followed them everywhere. Her voice rose from the trees, the rocks, the water itself, repeating the same command. In the spring of 1821, on Easter Monday, Betsy and Joshua were at the riverbank with friends. Kate's voice rose one last time, different now, almost pleading. She asked Betsy not to marry Joshua Gardner. Betsy removed the engagement ring from her finger and handed it back to Joshua. They never saw each other again. Joshua left the county and settled in western Tennessee. Betsy stayed. She went back to the farm, sat on the porch, and watched the Red River flow without a word until nightfall. The attacks on her diminished immediately, as though Kate had gotten what she wanted. December 19th, 1820. John Bell did not wake up. His body was there in the bed, alive but absent, sunk into a stupor no one could pull him from. Lucy took his hand. It was ice cold. John Jr. ran to the medicine cabinet. He knew the routine by heart. The same bottles, the same doses, every morning for weeks. That morning, the bottles were gone. In their place, a single flask, the same dark liquid no one had ever seen. John Jr. stepped back. He understood before he understood. Kate's voice rang through the house, triumphant. She said she had placed the poison in the cabinet, that she had administered it to the old man in his sleep, that he would never rise again. The doctor, Dr. Hobson, was sent for. While waiting for his arrival, John Jr. dipped a straw into the liquid and touched it to the cat's tongue. The animal convulsed, collapsed, dead in seconds. The flask was thrown into the fireplace. The flame that rose from it was nothing natural, blue. It shot straight up the chimney like a living thing and vanished. On December 20th, 1820, John Bell died. He had not regained consciousness. The funeral was one of the largest Robertson County had ever seen. Neighbors, farmers, the church elders who had excommunicated Bell 2 years earlier, they were all there, standing in the December cold, heads bowed before the open grave. 3 pastors delivered the eulogy. The earth was thrown onto the coffin. The prayers were spoken. And as the last mourners began to leave the cemetery, Kate's voice rose. She was singing. Celebration songs, joyful, mocking. She sang louder and louder and did not stop until the last man had crossed the cemetery boundary. Silence returned to the Bell farm. Kate announced to the family that she was leaving, that she would return in 7 years. In 1828, she came back, knocking on the walls, beds shaking, the same routine as the beginning, 13 years earlier. But this time, Lucy and her sons, Richard and Joel, ignored her. They did not respond, did not shout, did not pray. They acted as though the voice did not exist. Kate left after a few weeks. She said she would return in 107 years, in 1935. No one reported anything that year, nothing, at least, that resembled what the Bells had endured. The Bell house was demolished. The farm was divided among the children after Lucy's death. No one wanted to live in the old log cabin where the voice had echoed for 3 years. It was used as a storehouse for a while. Then the wood rotted and the walls fell. All that remained was the cave, a hole in the limestone, a few hundred yards from where the house had stood. Kate had mentioned it during the haunting. She said the cave was her anchor, the place that bound her to this land. The cave has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places since 2008. Visitors still descend into it. Some report whispers in the darkness, names spoken by no one. Kate Batts, the real woman, was not a witch. She was a woman who talked to herself on the county roads and laughed too loudly at the wrong moment. The neighbor women avoided her at the market. Children mocked her as they ran past. She outlived John Bell by several years and died on her farm without anyone accusing her of anything before a court of law. The records of the Red River Baptist Church mention no supernatural event during the entire duration of the haunting. The month John Bell died, the only entry in the church register reads, "No conference in December." The story could have ended there. One more mystery in Tennessee, with no explanation and no culprit. The story could have ended there. Except for Richard Powell. Powell was the school teacher on the Red River. He taught Betsy. He taught Joshua Gardner. He was 11 years older than Betsy, and he made no secret of his interest in her. What Powell did hide, however, was everything else. He was already married. His wife's name was Esther Scott. She lived in another county. No one on the Red River knew. Powell acted as though she did not exist. He also owned unusual books, treatises on the occult, complex works on chemistry and botany. Neighbors had caught him reading them. Each time he snapped them shut and put them out of sight. But above all, Powell possessed a very particular skill, exceedingly rare for the time. He was an exceptional ventriloquist. He could throw his voice, make it bounce off a wall, come down a chimney, or emerge from the darkness of the trees without opening his lips. When you look at the list, the pattern leaps out. The entity hated John Bell. He died of an unidentified poison, the kind of concoction an amateur chemist could have distilled. It hated Joshua Gardner. He lost Betsy. It adored Lucy. Lucy was never touched, and it tormented Betsy until she broke off her engagement to the only man standing between Powell and her. Esther Scott died in 1821. The same year, the phenomena ended. The same year Betsy and Joshua separated. In 1824, Betsy married Richard Powell. Powell became sheriff of Robertson County, then a representative in the Tennessee state legislature. The country school teacher had climbed fast, very fast. The enslaved workers of the Bell family were never given a voice in the official accounts, but according to some sources they had always known. Dean, the one the great black dog had followed from the beginning, was convinced that Powell was behind everything. No one has ever explained how a country school teacher could have stopped Andrew Jackson's wagon, or recited 2 sermons delivered at the same time 12 miles apart. But for the rest, the disembodied voice, the smoking poison, the whispered secrets, he had the motive, he had the knowledge, and he married Betsy.